Today we explore Chapter 20, a vital key to understanding the moral and ceremonial laws of the Israelites. This chapter is a societal mirror of that era, highlighting the moral, ceremonial, and conduct expected of the Israelites. It showcases how society and religion were linked and how Leviticus influenced people's daily lives. As we delve into the scriptures, keep an open mind and heart. In the next few minutes, we will dive into the depths of Leviticus chapter 20, verse by verse. The chapter begins with a stern warning from the Lord to Moses. As we delve into the first 5 verses of Leviticus chapter 20, we encounter a powerful divine mandate. God, in his infinite wisdom and justice, speaks to Moses, instructing him on the grave consequences for those who choose to walk the path of darkness, particularly those who sacrifice their children to Molech, a pagan god. This act, deemed heinous and abhorrent, is not merely a transgression against the moral fabric of society, but a direct affront to the sanctity of life, which God holds in the highest regard. God's instructions to Moses are explicit and unequivocal. Those who commit such an act are to be put to death. Their blood shall be upon their own heads, a stark reflection of the severity of their sin. Yet the verses advance further, extending the sphere of responsibility to the community at large. God commands that if the people of the community close their eyes to such deeds, if they choose to ignore the abomination and fail to execute the guilty, then he will set his face against that man and his family, and will cut him off from his people. This highlights the collective obligation to uphold justice and righteousness, underlining the significance of community vigilance and moral responsibility. In the face of such wickedness, silence and inaction are not options, they are in fact complicity. The community must stand firm, uphold the law, and ensure that such atrocities are not committed. The message is clear: there is a moral duty to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. These verses underscore the importance of moral integrity and the dire consequences of straying from the path of righteousness. They serve as a reminder of our collective responsibility to safeguard the sanctity of life and to stand against injustices. Thus, these verses emphasize the importance of upholding moral integrity and justice. Moving on, the subsequent verses focus on the consequences of seeking spiritual guidance from the wrong sources. Here, in verses 6 through 8, God issues a stern warning to the Israelites about the perils of turning to mediums and necromancers. In the ancient world, it was common for people to seek out these practitioners in hopes of gaining insight into the future or communicating with the dead. But God makes it clear to the Israelites that he views this as a grave sin. He tells them that if they turn to these practitioners, he will turn against them, setting his face against them and cutting them off from their people. This is a strong message, but it's also a reflection of God's desire for his people to trust him and him alone. He wants them to rely on his guidance, his wisdom, and his providence, rather than seeking out the false promises and deceptions of mediums and necromancers. But God's message doesn't end with a warning. He also extends an invitation. In verse 7, he encourages the Israelites to sanctify themselves and be holy, for he is holy. This is more than just a commandment, it's an invitation into a relationship. God isn't just interested in rules and regulations. He wants his people to reflect his character and to live in a way that honors him. And in verse 8, he reminds them that he is the Lord who sanctifies them. It's a comforting reminder that it isn't up to us to make ourselves holy. That's God's work, but we are called to cooperate with him in that process, to turn away from the things that defile us and to seek him with all our hearts. These verses remind us of the importance of seeking rightful guidance and maintaining spiritual purity. They challenge us to examine where we're seeking guidance and to consider whether we're striving for holiness in our lives. And they remind us that living a life that reflects God's character isn't just about following rules, it's about embracing the relationship that he offers us. The following verses contain some of the most stringent laws pertaining to respect and sexual morality. As we delve into verse 9, we encounter a powerful commandment that emphasizes respect for one's parents. The verse states that anyone who curses their father or mother must be put to death. This may seem severe, yet it underscores the importance of honoring our parents, a principle deeply woven into the fabric of many societies. Moving forward, verses 10 to 16 lay out prohibitions against certain sexual relationships. It's crucial to keep in mind the historical context. in which these laws were written. They served not only as moral guidelines, but also as means to maintain order and prevent conflicts within the tight-knit communities of the time. Verse 10 speaks against adultery, specifically a man sleeping with his father's wife. This commandment underscores the sanctity of marriage and the respect due to one's father. Verse 11 takes this a step further, forbidding a man from sleeping with his father's daughter or his mother's daughter. In verse 12, we find a prohibition against a man sleeping with his daughter-in-law, again emphasizing respect for familial relationships. Verse 13 addresses same-sex relationships between men, while verse 14 forbids a man from marrying a woman and her mother. Verses 15 and 16 then deal with bestiality, a practice considered not only morally reprehensible but also a disruption of the natural order. In each case, the punishment for violating these laws is death, a testament to how seriously these commandments were taken. While today we might not agree with such harsh penalties, it's important to remember the societal context and the role these laws played in shaping communities and guiding behavior. Verses 17 to 21 continue to outline forbidden sexual relationships, including with a sister or half-sister, a woman during her period, an aunt, or a brother's wife. The consequences of these actions range from being cut off from the community to childlessness. These laws, while strict and specific, served a purpose in their time. They helped define boundaries and maintain social order. They underscored the importance of respect for others, particularly within the family unit. They also highlighted the sanctity of marriage and sexual relationships. Although the details of these laws may not match our contemporary views on relationships and ethics, their fundamental principles endure. God had purpose behind these laws, and God is unchanging. We can value the focus on honoring parents, the sacredness of marriage, and the significance of upholding order within a society. As we reflect on these verses, we are reminded of the importance of respect, morality, and the sanctity of relationships. We are also reminded that these principles, while expressed differently across cultures and eras, remain universally relevant. These verses reinforce the principles of respect, morality, and the sanctity of relationships. Finally, the chapter concludes with a call for the Israelites to distinguish themselves from other nations. In these final verses from 22 to 27, God delivers a commanding message to the Israelites. He urges them to adhere to his decrees and laws, and to avoid defiling themselves with the practices of Egypt and Canaan, the lands they left and are about to enter. The instructions are clear and unambiguous. God wants the Israelites to not just follow a different path, but to be different, to mark themselves out as separate from the nations around them. And why this distinctness? Because God has chosen them. He has set the Israelites apart from all other people to be his own. This is a powerful message about maintaining identity and sanctity, about being proud of who you are, and about honoring the laws and decrees that guide you. Thus, the chapter ends with an emphasis on the importance of maintaining distinct identity and sanctity. Let's summarize the key points we've discussed in this video. We started with verses 1 through 5, condemning child sacrifice and idolatry and outlining the repercussions for those involved in such actions. Our continued to verses 6 through 8, highlighting the importance of sanctity and giving warnings against turning to mediums and spiritists. At the core of Leviticus Chapter 20, verses 9 through 21, we examined a set of moral laws discussing respect for parents, marital fidelity, and the prohibitions against various forms of sexual immorality. Lastly, in verses 22 through 27, we analyzed the appeal to the Israelites to distinguish themselves from other nations by sticking to God's statutes and decrees, underlining their chosen status and the necessity to preserve ceremonial cleanliness. As we wrap up our deep dive into Leviticus chapter 20, we are reminded of the timeless wisdom and moral guidance these ancient scriptures offer. Are you ready for the next chapter? Simply click here to continue.